In a landscape where businesses face numerous challenges, from regulatory hurdles to legal delays, the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce continues to advocate for pro-business policies. With 2024 well underway, the SC Chamber is steadfast in its commitment to championing the needs of job creators and entrepreneurs across the Palmetto State. We are happy to be joined by President and CEO of the SC Chamber of Commerce, Bob Morgan. Bob, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So the 2024 Competitiveness Agenda, you guys put a lot of time, a lot of effort. You spoke to over 900 business leaders across the state. Can you give us an overview of what the agenda consists of?
We have 5 broad categories that we talk about. We're in favor of anything that helps with the workforce development challenge. Tax reform has been part of our agenda for a long time. Lawsuit reform, also called tort reform. Letting business do business is a key part of it. And then just economic competitiveness.
Yeah. And now letting businesses do business, is it exactly what it sounds like?
Well, it's South Carolina is proudly a right-to-work state. We are one of the least unionized states in the country. That's part of the reason we're one of the fastest growing states in the country. It's also about the regulatory environment. You know, some states over-regulate more than others. South Carolina enjoys a reputation that we don't, and would like to keep it that way.
Yeah. Can you elaborate on the different points that you guys are hitting with the letting business do business?
Well, again, right to work, employment at will, not over-regulating industry. It also ties into the broader category of economic development, which is we need to continue, as we are the fastest growing state in the country, we have to continue to invest in infrastructure, whether that's the port, whether that's our interstates, continuing to make strategic investments that help the flow of products and goods in and through our state.
Yeah, and I do want to touch on the requirements. Could you talk about the potential consequences if state laws and federal regulations coincide?
Well, I'll give you one example that we lived through 2 years ago, which was the federal government was requiring businesses that did business with the federal government were required to have vaccine mandates for their workforce. Yeah. The state of South Carolina considered, did not pass, but considered passing a ban on such mandates. It would have potentially put companies that do business with the federal government in conflict over which one do we follow. Follow federal requirements and suffer penalties and fines at the state level, or follow the state law and risk losing the business with the federal government. Yeah.
And now what are some strategies that you could implement to ensure that that does not happen?
Well, when we talk about things like mandates, and we have recently testified to this matter, we like to say to the state and to the federal government, let's be careful in mandates that we put on employers. Does government really know what's best for a company? In the case of a pandemic, different companies took different approaches, and we would say, let companies make those decisions. Let's don't force companies on one side of the issue or the other. Yeah.
And now something I do want to briefly talk about, liquor liability insurance. There was a story recently of a local business that never planned to serve, liquor or whatever the case may be, but they are getting taxed a large sum of money because they are required to have this liquor liability insurance that they don't really need. Could you speak to that issue in particular?
Well, the cost of insurance for anybody who does serve alcohol has risen dramatically, like 400 and 500% in some cases. In other cases, establishments can't find anybody willing to underwrite the risk. Insurance companies are just saying, we're not going to be here. It's part of a larger problem, which we call tort reform or lawsuit reform, where we have something called joint and several liability, which allows trial lawyers to go after the deepest pockets in an accident. We're all for drunk drivers and others who cause accidents and tragedies to have to pay the penalties for those. But companies, and particularly restaurants and bars, as it relates to just liquor, but other companies more broadly as it relates to injuries in the workplace or injuries in life. In South Carolina, we have a way to go after the deepest pockets. We're lawsuit friendly, and we see it on the billboards and everywhere we look, and trying to make the system more fair so that those who are responsible for accidents and injuries are held responsible. Those that aren't, or those that are at a minimal level, don't have to pay exorbitant funds that you and I as consumers end up paying, whether it's through our insurance premiums or through the goods and products that we're purchasing.
Wonderful. And now briefly, very fast, we had you on a couple months ago to talk about the Hugh Leatherman terminal. Can you give us any updates on that?
Well, the Supreme Court just 2 weeks ago ruled in favor of the International Longshoremen's Association, meaning that the crane operators will no longer be employed by the port, as has been the case for more than 50 years. In fact, they'll be employed by the ILA, and it's now up to the ports and the ILA to work out the contract and hopefully get everybody on the Leatherman terminal, put them to work and let that realize the potential that it's had since it was built.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
We're back after this.